We are going to revisit a remarkable and unforgettable moment, one we had the privilege to share and, in fact, cover with you back in February. Remember the days after that historically devastating earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria while many people were sleeping? And in the end, there were staggering numbers in terms of deaths. More than 50,000 people killed, millions displaced. The scramble to locate and rescue survivors in the immediate aftermath of that quake, that was the top priority for crews that had assembled from the world over. And that included Canada. You remember that team from British Columbia. Well, Briar Stewart and her team were reporting live from Turkey with us on Morning Live. And together, we were live as we witnessed a true moment of human resilience. It unfolded right before our eyes as a woman who'd been trapped underneath the rubble for 5 days was rescued by a crew that included several Canadians. Well, if you missed it, or if you wouldn't mind seeing it again, let's play a bit of that moment once more.
They brought her out, and it's hard to see because they're actually kind of huddled over her. She's on the ground on the stretcher and doing some, kind of basic stabilization. We know, oh, here she comes down here. Again, just an incredible moment. This happened Monday. She's been in that building for days, freezing cold. She could hear rescuers, obviously, trying to get to her, and now she has been freed. The latest survivor of this earthquake. Really just a miraculous thing to see.
And just to look at her there, Briar, obviously they're covering her up, and we want to be careful and sensitive to that, but her eyes open and blinking, so conscious as she's taken to an ambulance to receive medical attention. But there, as you say, there is a moment of joy and hope for the country, which is seeing so much sadness and devastation and death. And this will be something to seize on this day 5. More than 100 hours in that rubble, and a woman pulled live from that scene. So that was the moment that I shared with Briar Stewart as she reported live from Turkey. And she's live with us again this morning. Wow, goosebumps to kind of revisit that moment of our broadcast, Briar. It was so extraordinary at that time. Even more extraordinary, you've had conversations with her since. I remember you went to the hospital to her bedside, and you've since seen her again. So tell us all about this woman and how she's doing now.
Well, yes. I mean, that was Özlem Ayna, who was rescued from the rubble. And we did get a chance to catch up with her recently because we were back in Turkey reporting on the election and doing a number of stories related to the earthquake. And we got a chance to speak with her in Istanbul, just outside of the hospital where she has been receiving treatment. And I think it is important to note that it's almost been 4 months since the earthquake, and she has been in hospital really almost the whole time. And when she came out, she had a big smile on her face. She was very happy to see us. But it didn't take long after we sat down at a cafe nearby to really just realize how much she had been struggling, both physically and mentally. And she did look quite a bit different from the last time when we saw her. And in part, that's because doctors had discovered that some lesions that she had on her head were not as superficial as they thought they first were. And so it's required a number of surgeries, skin grafts. That's why she had a shaved head. And on top of her physical injuries, she has been really struggling emotionally, just with the ordeal that she's been through and the great loss that all of these communities in southeast Turkey have suffered. I talked to her a little bit about her outlook. Here's some of our conversation.
What are your hopes then for the future?
Sometimes there is not at all. I mean, what I experienced in these 3 months is a very heavy pain.
She talks about that heavy pain, and she said that in her building, I mean, Ayna was living on the first floor of her apartment. In the first 3 floors of her building, there were only 3 survivors, she included in one of them. And just to, talk about some of the things she's been dealing with. I mean, it's one thing to survive what she's been through. It's another thing to move beyond it. And her conversation with us outside of the hospital, that was only the second time she'd been out of hospital since she had been rescued. And the first time was just a few days earlier. She went out to try to buy herself some clothes. She went into the change room and felt claustrophobic, trapped right away. And so she actually had a panic attack and had to leave. So she has really been struggling these last few months, Heather.
As you say, though, Breyer, moving beyond that whole question, living through something like this, surviving something like that must change life view, change perspectives and priorities. What does she see for her future?
Well, she does think that things are going to be a lot better when she's completely out of the hospital and back to teaching, which is what she loves doing. And so she's going to be assigned to a new classroom in the fall, but she was going to be going back to her home in Adiyaman, Turkey, because she had to go back to vote, but she also wanted to see what was left of her building for herself.
I'm definitely thinking about going to Adiyaman and facing the truth. I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, it's the city that I worked for 9 years and I have memories. At the same time, it's the city where I had the worst time of my life.
Now, she did go back and she said it was a very traumatic experience for her to be there. But I will say our short conversation with her that we had in person, it was about 45 minutes. And while we were there, we were able to pass along a care package from the firefighters in Burnaby, BC. They had sent along a photo and a letter that was in Turkish as well, kind of just supporting her and congratulating her on her resilience. And it is something that she said she'd like to hang in her new apartment.
Breyer, thank you so much for this and for revisiting the story with us. Breyer Stewart from London.